Thank you for tuning in to Nonprofits Talk. On this show, we discuss topics related to nonprofit capacity building, specifically in the areas of marketing and fundraising. I'm your host, Terrence Harrington. Tonight, our guest is Tamora Hughes-Walls. Tamora works as Assistant Director, Grants and Contracts for City Colleges of Chicago, supporting WYCC PBS Chicago, Channel 20, and WKKC 89.3 FM. Prior to this position, she worked for over 5 years with Kennedy King College's Career Program Department, where she has successfully written grants that have received funding in the amounts of over $1 million. She also works as an independent consultant servicing both nonprofit and for-profit organizations. Welcome to the show, Tamora.
Thank you. Thank you
for
having me.
Tonight we're going to be talking about Grant Proposal Writing 101. If you have questions or comments, please give us a call at area code 312-738-1060. Again, that's 312-738-1060. Let's get right at it, Tamora.
Okay.
All right, grant writing, proposal writing. A lot of nonprofits, this is their bread and butter. This is what they rely on. When we first started as a nonprofit, we got our 501c3 status, and we started writing for all kind of grants and got all kind of rejection letters. So let's talk about being grant ready.
Okay. Well, basically, for a non-for-profit organization to get prepared for being ready for the competition, you really need to take the time to maybe take some courses, learn about the industry, learn about the organizations that are actually funding individuals, and really getting yourself in a place that you become the student. Before you actually apply for a grant. So in that preparation and doing that, you really learn a lot of different things. Sometimes you want to actually find a mentor. Organizations that have been getting funding for years, and find out if you can kind of just sit underneath them and really find the strategies, the way that they've been effective in getting their funding. So that I think those are some of the key things to do, is to find resources, find a mentor, but also to find some courses and classes that you can take. So there's plenty of trainings that are all over that you can do and learn how to actually write effectively.
Awesome. So grant readiness also entails having your board of directors, having the capacity to receive grants. Can we speak to that?
Sure. I mean, with as you're preparing your organization, it is key that you have everybody in line and on staff, which means that you need your board to handle your governance and make sure that everything is in order. You want to make sure that you're organized correctly, the right way, so you don't get in trouble with the IRS.
Right.
We talked about that a little bit. So you want to make sure that everything is in order, but also then you need to make sure that you have the team to build capacity. You need to be able to make sure that you have the right players. So having a grant writer or a grant professional that really knows how to put together a proposal will be key. And also then to have your program managers, your administrators, people that will do your day-to-day work. So as you build a team, it makes it so much easier when you get prepared to do those proposals, because that's the thing they're going to ask. Who's in charge of the money? How are you going to handle it? How are you going to track it? How you're going to evaluate it and show your success? And how will you sustain it? So one of the key things is making sure you have a team so that you can sustain your program. Most funders are interested in sustaining the program. Although they may help you start it, they want to make sure that after their money is gone, that you will be able to continue your program. They do not want to fund programs that are going to lapse after the money's gone. So they want to make sure that you have a valuable program and you have valuable people that are actually going to contribute to your success.
So let's talk about how should a nonprofit get organized when writing their grant proposal.
Well, I think some of the first things is, and I call it the 3 S's. The first thing is to study.
Okay.
That's the first thing, is to really study the industry, study the field, the topics that you're interested in, study the organizations that are already doing what you're doing. I think that's the first thing, is to study.
Okay.
Then you need to structure. So you need to structure your organization. Make sure you have everybody in place or close to in place, especially your key players, before you start filing or start applying for proposals. One, because they're going to ask it in the proposal.
Okay.
They're going to want to know the experience. They're going to want to know have the resumes in line. They're going to want to make sure that there are quality people that are actually executing this project. So that's the other S. And then the other S is strategic planning.
Okay.
You should develop a plan before you write a proposal.
Gotcha.
Which means that if the proposal, most proposals are 35 to 40 days,
Okay.
and then there's a deadline and it's due, which means that you don't want to wait on the 5th day to try to pull together a proposal, and you're going to have to meet a deadline and put all these things together. So the best thing to do as you start out is to actually sit down with your board, sit down with your team, and actually develop a strategic plan,
Gotcha.
a strategy, actually put together a proposal before you actually submit it. That plan can be used as a template so that then when the proposals come out, you'll have something to reference, and you'll be able to actually pull that information and then put it into your application. It'll make it even easier for you to apply for more things if you do it that way. So I call it the 3 S's. Really simple. That you study it, that you actually begin to structure your organization, and then build a strategy. Plan.
So what you were speaking to was a boilerplate grant proposal. Is that correct?
Yes.
So and you treat that just like any regular. You do that prior to you actually applying for a grant.
Yes.
So it gets you the thought process going, right?
Exactly.
So what actually is included in the grant proposal?
Well, within the grant proposal, most proposals ask for an executive summary.
Okay.
So you'll have to include your executive summary. Then there is a statement of need. Usually you have to indicate why you're applying for this, or why do you think that there's a need in your community, in your organization, and how your program can actually meet the need. Then you have to put together a program narrative. So in that narrative, it gives detailed information about what your program is, how it operates, your mission statement, your goals, your objectives. All of that information is in your program. Then normally you have some kind of project or a timeline, some benchmarks indicating how you're going to execute your project within the certain period, the project period that they're actually going to fund you for. So you're actually having to show that you can execute this within 6 months or within a year. Then you actually have to put together, and this is the biggest thing now, is the evaluation.
Okay.
You have to make sure that you can show measurable outcomes, meaning your funder is wanting to know, if you do this, how do you know that you're successful? So a lot of people now, I've noticed a lot of organizations have not been doing this, but it is key that you actually put together this evaluation plan.
Okay.
It's kind of putting together a social return on investment. They call it an SROI. And so it's kind of like in the for-profit business, it's an ROI.
Right.
It's return on investment. Well, with a nonprofit, you have an SROI, which is a social return on investment. The difference is that a lot of times as a nonprofit, it's hard to measure your success because of the activity,
right?
And you have to put a value or financial value to that. So a lot of times what you have to do now is to really analyze how this breaks down financially, which means, for example, if I have an after school program and I have 25 kids and it's a literacy program and all of them are in an 8th grade core class, but they read on a 3rd grade level.
Okay.
Well, if the case is that they're reading on a 3rd grade level, how do I measure my success? And then how will that turn out financially?
Right.
In the end result, my success of measurement would be that of those children that are now reading on an 8th grade level, how did that save money? Maybe it saved the parent money from having to go to an organization or a tutor, so that could save money. It could save money in the school. So now the school doesn't have to spend a lot of extra money on supplemental programs and so forth. So that's what you would do with an SROI, to be able to actually show evaluation that if we do this program and we have this number of children, we'll actually save money in various areas.
Right. So you're showing the value that you're bringing to the marketplace. Okay.
Exactly. And then the very last thing in your proposal after the evaluation is the budget.
Right.
Is making sure that your numbers are correct, concise, making sure that they're reasonable. And then the last thing is actually summarizing everything and putting the whole proposal together.
So who should be writing the grant proposal?
I would suggest, if you're not a skillful writer, and you really need to have a skill when it comes to proposal writing. If you're, say, for instance, you're a poet, That's not necessarily, I mean, you can be very eloquent with writing proposals, but it might not necessarily be. You still need to understand the strategies.
It won't get you the money.
Well, I mean, on the, you can flow, but, when it comes to really knowing the structure of putting a proposal together, you really need to have someone that's skillful in doing that. My suggestion, if you have the dollars, is to be able to hire a grants professional to do it. Or if you have someone on your team that's able to actually put together proposals, then I would suggest that. Many times I've had clients that actually go out and try to do it themselves. But if you don't understand the structure of it, you will get a lot of denials before you get an approval. So even if you can't afford, maybe you would actually write the proposal yourself as an individual and then hire somebody to actually, a professional to review it and to help you through it. Maybe that'll save you some money.
Gotcha. And that leads me to my next question. Why is it important to follow the funder's guidelines?
So you can get the money.
It can't be any simpler than that.
So, I mean, the funder knows what they want. And so it's important to really look at the criteria that you'll see in any kind of request for proposal. And you have to follow those guidelines that they're requesting and follow what they're looking to fund. And for instance, if you apply for a grant and you specialize in youth, but the funder is only supporting veterans or supporting seniors, well, if you send a proposal just talking about youth, you're not aligning with what they want to fund, and you probably will get a denial unless some kind of way your youth program is working with veterans or your youth program is working with seniors, that then you can bring that connection, that then you might be able to. So it's important to find the right funder in order to get the money that you need.
Even like you just alluded to, even if it may not be a perfect fit, there's some way that you can possibly, just like we said in the example of the youth working with veterans, we may not provide the quote unquote perfect veterans program, but this is how we tie into it. So that's a possibility, though.
Yeah, and it's really building alliances. I tell people that I work with and clients that it's important, especially now, there's so many people competing for dollars. And so partnership is one of the key things many funders are looking for. They're looking for partnerships because they know that you can't necessarily execute the whole project. And also they want to be able to split up the pie so they don't have to decide who they're going to fund. But if you have a collaborative group and you're part of that group, it gives you even a better opportunity. So even partnering with an organization, then if you have a youth program, but yet the funder's looking to do something with veterans, but some way you can integrate working with the youth and the veterans working together for some mentoring or something like that, then it gives you even a better opportunity of getting some funding and getting a piece of the pie. Not the whole pie, but a piece of pie.
So how do you go about locating funding sources?
There are so many resources that are out there right now that are available as far as locating funding. A lot of things you can find online. One of them for the federal funding is grants.gov. So you can go to grants.gov and really find all of the our government agencies, and be able to do a search, and you can do it by topic, and it'll actually show you the funding that's available. There are also other funding opportunities like the Foundation Center. You can actually go onto their website. Some of them are paid services where you have to pay services. Grant Station is another organization that you can actually find, and it's subscription based. So you will have to. I have a grants portal that I have and put together. So when I get grants, I actually put those things out there, and it's called the Grants Funding Network. And so you can go and see if there's some grants out there that are available for you, and to be able to find out which one's the best match. So there are a lot of sources out there. Some of them you have to pay for, but there are some free sources available.
And here in Chicago, we do have the Donors Forum.
We have the Donors Forum,
where you can go down there and research grant proposals that may be available to your organizations. Now, is there a fee for that, or is it free?
Actually, you can go to the donors forum for free. They usually have some workshops that are free that you can go to, but then you can pay for a subscription. And when you pay for the subscription, you get a little bit detailed information.
Okay.
You actually get support. People can actually help you do your searching and so
Okay.
forth if you become a member, so you can go to the donors forum as well. Also, the Department of Human Services, they have
DHS.
something called GAS, which is the Grant Alert System, and you can actually get on their email blast, and
Okay.
so when grants come out, you can actually be on their listserv, and they will actually send you grants via email. And they have not only the local grants, but they also have the federal grants and that kind of thing, so you can actually see what's out there.
that's
So you
awesome.
can go, and that's free.
Okay, awesome. So now we found the funder. We have our boilerplate grant proposal. How much description should be going? Because I know we spoke a little bit about it. The narrative. How much description should be going into about the program and what the deliverables? What are you going to be providing?
In the project narrative, you really want to be clear. You want to be concise. You don't want to be too lengthy, especially if it doesn't relate to what the funder is looking
Okay.
for. So you want to get straight to the point of what you're going to provide. It's almost kind of thinking about the who, why, what, where is
Gotcha.
what you want to get into that part of your proposal to make sure that you're answering the right questions. Many of your Fed proposals, they have criteria questions, so they'll ask you questions or statements, and it'll indicate the person that is applying for this grant should say this, or we're looking for this, this, and this.
Okay.
And so as you're putting together your narrative, you're following that criteria because they're going to score you. On the Fed level, you usually receive scores for certain sections. So you want to make sure that each statement that they're asking or asking you to answer, that you answer it clearly, so that then you can get the points for that. And the more points you get, the better opportunity you actually get for the funding. So you want to make sure that you're clear and concise with your proposals.
So what type of grants are out there? I know there's a matching grant, there's a seed funding. So let's talk about the various grants that exist.
Well, normally what you have are competitive grants, and then you have formulative grants. So with your competitive grants, these are the grants that everybody, I call it getting in Walmart line. It's the grant where you get in line, you apply just like everyone else, and you go out there and try to get a grant. But then there are also formula grants, which means that they're specific grants. The funder is specifically looking for a certain thing. For instance, you may be in a certain community, and so you would be a target person that they would look for.
Okay.
And it could be an invitation where they actually invite you to actually present your program to them, where you're not necessarily competing because you've already fall within their criteria. They just really want to see how effective you will be if they fund you the dollars. So with your competitive grants, though, you're able to go out there, you're able to actually compete for these grants, get and try to apply to see if you can get some of the funding for those opportunities.
So, okay, again, the type of grants, competitive, and what was the other one?
Formative grants.
Okay. And so, again, if we're talking about a matching grant, what is that considered to be?
Well, with your matching grants, basically, what they want to know is how you will be able to match the dollars.
Okay.
So sometimes with a matching grant, you may have to match 10% or 20% of the total. So whatever the total money amount you're requesting, that particular grant may require that you match 20% of the total amount.
Okay.
It's really to see the investment that you're putting into it. It's kind of like when you go to a bank, the first thing the bank asks is, well, how much are you putting into it?
Right.
It's really to show that I have value in this project. And so some of these grants really look for that match, where they're asking you to match. We'll give you a certain amount if you match a certain amount.
Okay.
Now, sometimes those matches are cash, but also they may be in kind. So many times your match doesn't necessarily have to be total cash. It could be a match of in-kind services, which means that maybe somebody volunteers their time with salary, and you can kind of value that out and show that as a match. So there are different ways that you can actually do that.
So is there, for lack of better words, an easy grant to go after?
No. I hate to say it. I don't believe it's easy if we do what we talked about earlier, and that's the strategic plan.
The 3 S's.
Is to really get that plan together, make sure your structure's together, and make sure that you've done your study. If you do all of that, then it makes it easier, if you want to use the word, to make it easier to really go after these opportunities. Being prepared is the most important thing you can ever do. I tell some of my clients, start working now, even if you haven't applied yet. Put together those resumes, because that'll be standard. Put together those letters of support. That will be standard. Make sure that you can pull together some of the things that you know that are already going to go into the grant. And if you have a basic template, a template that really works, you want to put together that template as well. So when the grant comes out, then all you have to do is do a little changing and a little altering. You'll have more time to review the grant before you submit it. And that's what makes it easier, I believe, is just having the prep time.
Gotcha.
If you prepare, not wait to the last minute, and be ready. Also, I suggest that you put together a spreadsheet. So that when you're doing your researching and seeing, so that then you can, when the deadlines are, all the requirements, so that then you have some kind of organization so you don't miss any grant opportunities. Many times we miss grant opportunities because we don't have it laid before us. We don't have the plan. So I always suggest putting together like a grants search database or something like that, so that then you can actually know when these funders are actually funding the programs or sending out the proposals that you can submit on time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the budget. How important, I know the budget is important, so say for instance, we talked about a youth program and you're going to be servicing 20 youth. How do you formulate the budget if you've never ran a program before? How do you, are those estimations? How real are the numbers?
Well, they're actually projections, but that's where your research comes. That's where you start to look at other organizations that do what you want to do. And many times, because this is public knowledge, a lot of things you can actually find, and that you're able to acquire annual reports and that kind of thing. So you want to take that time to do that research and really look at what other people are doing, but then you want to take the time to really value, if you need computers, you got to kind of go shopping, just like you would do with your own personal budget. You really want to put those things together and sit down. That's why it's important to sit down with your board, sit down with your project team, and when you do that strategic plan, that the budget is a part of that. So you have input from everyone that's telling you this doesn't sound realistic, or we can't meet this goal. So that then when you put that budget together, that budget should align with your narrative. A funder will do that. When I do peer reviewing on the federal level, and when we review these grant proposals, we're looking not only at the budget, but we're also looking at the narrative, because if you say you're going to buy 10 computers, but then in the narrative you say 5, then that's a kind of a red flag. So those are the kind of things you really need to look at when you're putting your budget together.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we only have a couple more minutes.
Okay.
So any last minute thoughts about grant writing that the audience should know about?
Well, in this, I get a lot of calls pertaining to grant writing and people really wanting to go after these dollars. The dollars are there. It's just the preparation time and making sure that you're prepared. And you want to make sure that the things that we talked about today, that you really take the time to study, you take the time to structure, and then you take the time to do a strategic plan, and it just gives you such a better opportunity of going out there to get the dollars. You don't want to rush into it. So many times we want to do that because there's so many dollars out there, but if you take the time to really put a good proposal together, you have such a higher percentage of actually getting funded. Awesome. Well, Tamora, thank you so much for taking the time to share all this valuable information with the viewing audience. Audience, if you want to find out more information about Tamora and her organization, please visit our website at www.nonprofitsmatter.org. Again, that's www.nonprofitsmatter.org. Thanks again for tuning in to Nonprofits Talk.
remember, if people don't know that you exist, they can't support you. So make sure that you get your fundraising and your marketing together, and go out there and do the great work that your organization is capable of doing and fulfilling your mission. Have a good night.